So the first question that we have is, what inspired us to start this YouTube channel?
We started our YouTube channel many years ago, and we had recently adopted the children, and we were seeing so many doctors and so many therapists because the kids' medical needs were extremely complex, and they are still extremely complex. And it was suggested to us that we start filming them when they were having some of their complex issues and their everyday things.
And that's why earlier on in our video program, you see a lot of videos with seizures in them. Those were specifically requested by doctors as well as some therapists and things like that. They wanted to capture what the kids were like naturally, day-to-day kind of life, as well as when seizures happened. So they were able to bounce some ideas off colleagues, and that's colleagues all over the world that we had responses to.
As most of their medical needs have stabilized, we still have seizures, we still have different things, but we have a good handle of what's happening with the children. We've kind of shifted a bit, and we're not including as many of the medical things because the purpose of posting them, an educational purpose for the doctors, the specialists, the therapists, and other people that might be experiencing the same thing, that's not so much of a shift now.
Yeah, it's not so much of a focus, I guess you would say, so much. But our focus is more on education, so that hopefully there's something that you guys can take away for what we produce.
So we hope that you're enjoying the shift away from some of the medical things.
Yeah.
And realizing that the kids still have their challenges, but now we're trying to focus more on the day-to-day and what we're doing to help teach the children to be as most independent and successful as possible in their lives.
Yeah, so that leads us into the next question is, how do we come up with a name, Just a Different Life?
So this one's kind of funny because we were brainstorming how could we come up with a name, and Sean said, well, what kind of questions do people ask us? And I said the number one question that we get is, how do you guys do this? And my response had always been, well, it's just a different life. This is just our different life.
Yeah, it's just the way it is. It's the, our family dynamics are not the same as everybody's family dynamics by far. We're very, very different here. So when Deb said that, I said, that's it. That's the name. And she said, what? And I said, just what you just said, Just a Different Life. That's going to be our name. And that has stuck with us.
How do we come up with video ideas?
Wow. Sometimes it is driven by you, the audience, saying, hey, thank you so much for posting this or that or something else. And then we'll sort of make a note of that and say, that's something maybe that there's more of an interest in people are wanting. So let's try to do a few things like that. That's why you've noticed some of the cooking videos, for instance, that we've had, because it sparked quite an interest. It's educational. It really supports our children here. I mean, that's just great for the kids to be able to do those things.
And all our videos are things that the kids would typically be doing. So it's not like we are just coming up with ideas just to produce a video.
We try to focus around what is going on at that particular moment in our lives, as opposed to anything else, keeping in mind what the audience has asked for more information on.
The game show that we just recently posted, we did plan it that we were going to do a video, but we've been working on life skills, and it was a fun way for the kids to show what they've been learning.
And I'm just going to ask, how long of planning did it take to do that video? The planning part, not just the filming part, but the planning part.
Probably close to a week by the time we planned everything, came up with activities, because we wanted to have challenges that at least everybody could be successful at something.
Yeah, that was sort of our driving force. We didn't want to show failure. We wanted to show success in varying ways. And success can mean, one team helping another, for instance, like you saw in the video. That was natural. None of this stuff is scripted that you see here. This is all, what do you say, off the cuff, so to speak.
Yeah.
Even what we're doing right now is off the cuff. We've not rehearsed this. This is, you're getting the raw data, so to speak.
So that one was filmed for you guys, but we do activities like that all the time.
Yeah.
We practice our life skills all the time, so we're sharing what we normally do around here.
So next question is, how do we balance filming, editing, and everyday responsibilities?
We don't always balance it. There's times like when Darren had his surgery, we stopped filming for a few weeks because we had extra things on our plate. We didn't want Darren's recovery to be the focus.
Yeah.
And so we didn't post for a little bit. If we stop posting for a while, maybe we're not doing a very good job of balancing. But family comes first.
What has been the biggest challenge parenting children with additional care needs?
I think everyone's going to be shocked when we tell them what the biggest challenge has been.
What do you think it is? Leave us some comments below before you hear what our answer is here.
The biggest challenge is dealing with all the bureaucrats trying to get the funding and the support that the children are entitled to and deserve to have.
And what we say by entitled to is we have certain laws here in British Columbia that provide a certain level of funding and, what would you say, therapeutics, things like that. Mm-hmm. And quite often the bureaucrats like to hold the purse strings really close. And even though it says clearly on paper and what their mandate is, they tend to not to want to part with that money as if it was their own personal little piggy bank for the most part.
And I have to say, as the children are becoming adults, so in British Columbia, things start changing. At 18, they lose some of their supports, and then at 19, some different supports come in, and switching from the child and youth section to the adult section has been a huge battle trying to get the supports. And if the bureaucrats had their way, the children wouldn't have support.
No, they wouldn't a lot of the times. And a lot of parents will tend to give up, or caregivers will tend to give up and say, okay, well, they told me no, so I guess it's no. We don't normally take no for an answer. If we know, and this is where it's important to make sure that you know what is permitted and what's not permitted. Obviously, it would be pointless to be continually asking for something that is not funded or supported in any way, shape, or form. But when something is, we don't tend to take no for an answer, and we will move it up the food chain, so to speak. I want to speak to your boss, and your boss has a boss too, and it goes right up the ladder. And sometimes we have to push.
And people might be wondering, like, how do you know what is available? And the way that we've been able to find out what's available is to look at the online for the different agencies that are involved and research their materials to see what they are saying is available, and also connect with other individuals that have similar challenges to your family and see what services and supports they have. Because I would say that other families is a huge asset to tell you, like, oh, I got this and it was from here, and
something we've maybe never heard of.
Yeah. And we do just as much sharing of what supports we were able to access, and it's just having those conversations and seeing what's available, and then going online and researching as much as you can to see what they actually offer. And
every province in Canada here is different. There's no two that are identically the same, and that would go with the different states down in the US and the other provinces and states in other countries throughout the world. So you really have to become familiar with what is available in your area, electoral area, and go from there. That's all we can say. But do your research. That's super, super important. There's no sense, like I said, going after something that really is not available. You need to know what to go after.
And then make sure that that fits for your needs, because there's no point going after it just because it's available if that's not going to be beneficial to you and your family.
That is correct. The next question we have here is, how do we plan for our child's future in terms of education, independence, or career? So, you want me to, to lead off with this one?
Go for it.
Okay, so a firefighter once told me that you can approach a certain type of fire, structure fire, whatever. You've got your plan laid out, and first contact with the structure on fire, those plans go right out the window, and you sort of have to go with what the fire dictates to you. It's no different than planning with your children. You can expose them to all sorts of different things. They might not be interested. It might not work. What do? You just keep trying, honestly.
So for the education part, you're trying to educate your child as much as possible, but your child might not be grasping things. We have children at all different levels. Some have been working on kindergarten level work for 13 years.
And they haven't advanced any further, so there's no point in trying to direct a child like that to be a rocket scientist. You know, I know I'm really like exaggerating a little bit here, but you sort of have to go with where they're at any given time, and that, you keep in mind, could change. You may be thinking that, you know, you've got a good career path for a child, and the child goes, I've done that, and that was kind of fun, but I'd like to move on. Okay, so then we switch to plan B, C, D, and on it goes. So you really have to respect when your child, you know, especially becomes an adult, what they want. It's not necessarily what we want, but what they want. And if that means that they're doing something that's would be considered very basic for us, but it's exciting for them, go for it. You know what? This world doesn't operate without everybody chipping in, honestly.
For independence, we are teaching skills of independence right from the start. Obviously, those are at different levels. What you would have a toddler doing for skills towards independence would be different than what you would have an 18-year-old doing. But you would like to push the person to be as independent as possible for them.
For them, that's correct. Keeping in mind that they may never be fully independent. They may always depend on somebody or something to help them to adapt.
But really, don't we all depend on other people, just at varying levels?
That's correct.
And career.
Yeah, so when it comes to careers, our 5 biological children and some of our adopted children, you take a look at them. Is anybody doing the same as another one?
No.
No, they're not. We have a very wide variety of skills and interests amongst all our children, and they're all in very different careers.
And I would say that they're all happy with where they are. They're
happy and they're successful, and really that's what's important. They're living independently. Some have bought houses. And that's an amazing feat in this day and age. You know, to be able to buy your own house doesn't mean they're necessarily going to live in your backyard, your next door neighbor. That's just not a reality. And our family is scattered from one coast here right over to the other coast. That's just the way things go.
For the 7 that are living at home, their careers are going to look a lot different than some of our other children, because their skill level is different. Cheyenne, for instance, she really wanted to work at a public library. And we saw a job opportunity to be a page. That's the person that is putting the books back on the shelf. And it was for young people. It was a job specially designed for young people.
For students.
Yes. We helped Cheyenne. When we saw the job become available, we let her know. We helped her fill out a resume.
Prepped her for the interview. She got the job and quickly decided it wasn't for her. she found a lot of difficulties with the way a library works. It's very technical as far as how books get put away.
And when you're dyslexic, that adds a whole nother challenge to putting things away.
That's correct. So it wasn't for her, no worries. Let's move on. Let's find something that does work.
Yeah.
So that's why she comes out and goes trucking with me from time to time and acts as my swamper, which is another name for a laborer. So she'll help with strapping loads and unstrapping loads and things like that.
And she has visions of being a truck driver, but at this point in her life, she isn't able to get a driver's license. So that might come down sometime down the road, but for now, we'll just keep expanding her knowledge and exploring different things and see if she comes up with something that she enjoys doing.
That's right. So next question is, what adaptations do you make in teaching or learning materials to cater to individual needs? I want to focus, I think, to start with the whole idea of individual needs. People have asked us in the past, how many kids do you have? And well, we have 18 children. And so how does it mix up a little bit here, boys and girls? And I just simply say we have one of each, because they're all individuals, and you cannot treat them all the same. You have to actually look at their individual needs and abilities or capabilities, and then work at it from there.
And then their wants and desires.
Yeah, and wants and desires have to be part of that as well. So sometimes they clash, and sometimes it presents a bit of a problem because they think they can do something. When they go to do it, they get frustrated because they physically can't, because of fine motor challenges or intellectual challenges or things like that.
And sometimes they just have to learn that the hard way, and let them try and let them fail so that they can come at it from a different approach.
So when it comes to what learning materials or things like that, we research and we see that something may or may not fit. We can try it out if there's a sample to try. If not, then we purchase, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So we have a very, very vast collection, I would think, of learning materials for the children. And we don't specifically say, well, that's only for so-and-so. You never know. That might not work for one, but it might work for another, which we hadn't even thought of in the first place.
And sometimes part of whatever resource will work, but not the full resource.
Correct.
One of the biggest things that we experienced when we first adopted, our daughter was in kindergarten, and she had a lot of problems with her fine motor skills. And she was at public school, and the public school told them that they had to draw circles to represent each number in an equation.
Like the size of a penny or a nickel or something like that. So
if it was 5 plus 5, she had to draw 5 circles and then 5 more. And then she had to do equal, and she had to draw 10 circles.
And add them all up, count them all out.
And then write the number. Well,
so what was the biggest challenge with that? Was it the actual counting, what the end goal was?
No, her biggest challenge was drawing all of these circles. And when we said to the teacher, if she's having trouble drawing the circles and the end goal is to learn how to count and to add, then maybe we could use some counters. And the teacher's response was, no, this is the way I've always taught it. This is the way we have to do it.
And our response is no. If it's not working, then we're going to have to switch it up a little bit. I mean, what do they say is the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. And honestly, that's what it comes down to.
So I would say the biggest thing when looking at a resource is looking at what it is your end goal is, and making sure that there isn't other obstacles in the way for your child or individual, and that is stopping them from getting to the end goal.
So it may mean that you have to mix things up over and over and over again and try many, many different ways. But at some point, hopefully, they will get it, as as our daughter did.
Yeah.
And she was able to count. It just had to be mixed up a different way. How do you collaborate with teachers or therapists to support learning at home?
So it really helps that all of the teachers and our therapists and everybody comes into our home to work, and we all eat lunch together.
So it's a true team approach where we're constantly encouraging to have the different therapists and teachers and education assistants and whatever else we've got a mixture of here, whatever title they happen to be, is to collaborate together. And lunchtime, sharing a meal, and that's with the children. They can discuss what worked, what didn't work, and someone might bounce a suggestion off of them and say, hey, did you try this or that? And we'll get involved if we have to, but we try to let that grow organically, so to speak.
But we do encourage that they don't talk negatively at the table about, oh, I was working with so-and-so today and they were having a very difficult time. When we come to the table, it's a fresh start. And when we leave the table, it's a fresh start.
So that is something that gets reinforced on a I won't say a daily basis, on a fairly regular basis. Sometimes we have to bring them back to what our original goals are.
But if a therapist is teaching a certain approach, we will frequently have our education assistants and other support staff go and sit in with the therapist to support whatever child they're working with at that time. So they are seeing the approaches from the different members of our therapy team so that they can carry that over into their teaching and supporting.
And practical skills, yeah.
And supporting of the individuals.
Hey, next question. What's one piece of advice, just one, that you wish you'd known before starting your journey? I think for me, one piece of advice I would give is learning to read between the lines. When we first started the journey of adoption, the children, and keep in mind that the way they're presented is done by script, so to speak. When you read about a child, there's certain key words and phrases that they use, and you tend to see this over and over and over again, and you think to yourself, is this, reality? Is this a script that they're reading from? And they're trying to, what would you say, they're obviously focusing on the positive with each individual child, but the approach they use, I think, is to try to keep the language the same, so to speak, amongst all the different workers that are out there. So they don't want any mixed messaging, so they have a very limited number of phrases that they can go through.
I think the advice that I might give is that the raising the children part and the working with the children part, that's really the easy part. It's dealing with all the bureaucrats and everything else involved, and how much time you have to spend advocating for your child's needs, whether that's with the medical system, the education system, the social workers, and getting support. Wherever it is, you're spending so much time advocating for your child, and you really need to be prepared for how strong you're going to have to be to support a child with special needs.
What strategies have you found most effective when advocating in education, healthcare, or policy?
Not giving up.
Not giving up. I think that's the one thing, is do not give up. And if you're getting nowhere with person A, find out who their immediate supervisor is and start moving it up the chain. Don't let this drag on. You're going to have to be fairly fast at advocating. Give them time, obviously, to respond. But when they say, oh, we'll look into it, that is typically an excuse to kick the can down the road. So be on top of them, be polite, I will say that, but be firm. Don't, you're not to be pushed around. You are the public, and their role is to serve. And they need to maybe not necessarily be reminded of that all the time, but it doesn't hurt. I honestly saying, I have no qualms at saying that to somebody if they're not doing what their job entails.
And document everything. put it in writing if it's an email or whatever, and just print it off every time you send one, and refer to the previous email, or if you had a phone call, follow it up with an email. We spoke on such and such a day. This is what I understood to be the outcome of that call. Document everything so that you have the history. So as you're moving up those steps, you can say, this was last week, this was the week before, and you have it all. So as you're going up, you are very strong in your case.
So that sort of covers our next question. I think we've answered that now. How do you handle setbacks or pushback when advocating for your children? And the bottom line is you have to be very persistent.
And you have to push back harder.
And exactly. And if that means moving it up the chain, at some point, somebody's going to say, why am I getting this on my desk? This should have been handled at 4 levels below me. And they will be the catalyst to make that happen, honestly. Can you share a success story from your advocacy work that made a significant impact?
I would say that the biggest impact that we had with some of our advocacy was when we were trying to keep the 7 children that are currently living in the home that are full biological siblings. We were wanting them to be raised together, and we had to fight. And we had to fight really hard to have them all placed together so that they could grow up with their siblings.
And one of the things that we thought we would do is put out a call to just a few friends and family saying, is it possible to get a couple of letters of support to keep the 3 youngest siblings with the 4 older siblings that we initially adopted. Keep in mind that when we adopted the first 4 that are living here, the oldest 4, the other 3 weren't even born yet.
Savannah was expected.
That's correct.
But she wasn't born yet.
Yeah. So when she was born, then they put it off and said no because birth mom is expecting again, and then it happened a 3rd time.
And we had applied to adopt them, and then because we applied to adopt the 2, and then there was another one on the way, Lucas, and then they said no, that would probably be too much for your family. So that's why we asked friends and family for a letter of support. Did they think that we were capable of managing a sibling group of 7
and
on top of our existing family?
Yeah, exactly. And honestly, when we did that, we expected or had hoped to get maybe 2 or 3 letters. And how many did we end up? About 70?
Yes.
About 70 letters. We weren't even asking people. Word got out and letters were written. And I ended up having to go up to the political level of government because I was getting nowhere due to, I would say, 1 or 2 people's bias against large families. I think that's really what it came down to. Mm-hmm. In their minds, they don't see how it's possible to handle that many children with special needs especially, but they're looking at their own bias. Honestly, they're thinking to themselves, I couldn't do it, so therefore nobody could do it. I think that's really what it came down to. So unfortunately, we had to take it right up to the political level and advocate through multiple people at the political level.
And it actually landed on the legislature floor where they were discussing it, and then we were successful at being able to adopt the 3.
It's unfortunate that it had to go that far. It should never have happened. But
and the time and the resources that it took to get to that is unbelievable. Yeah,
and that's what I think what a lot of people don't realize is the amount of time, effort, and resources that go into the advocacy work, whether it be, to get a child a certain type of therapy or for adoption or whatever. It's hard.
A certain medical assessment.
Correct.
Some of the assessments, you could be on a wait list for 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, and to us that is absolutely unacceptable. And, people have said to us, well, if you're pushing that hard, you're going to bump other people. And my response has been, well, that's up to the other people to advocate for themselves. My job, my role, my responsibility is to advocate for the children that I have.
And I truly don't believe that it is bumping somebody else. I think it is pushing so that whoever has whatever pot, they can advocate that they need more supports to run their program.
Yeah. So I think we'll wrap up with our maybe our final question here is, what are your future plans for the channel?
I think that's really up to our audience.
Yeah, this is why we ask all the time to please comment, like, and share, because the wider this is exposed to the world here, the more ideas we can come up with. Like I said, we want to focus on the educational part of it to help people. We don't want to be the entertainment channel, so to speak.
So if you have any video ideas that you would like us to do, please leave comments, send us an email. Just let us know what kind of videos you'd like to see.
Yeah, and
if you're enjoying the life skills and the different type of content that we've been producing, let us know that as well.
Yeah. Anyways, thank you.
Thanks again for watching, and we will see you again soon. Goodbye.
Bye.